Throughout NBA history, there have been many great teams who for some reason or another have failed to capture a title. The unfortunate reality for some of these teams is that they could have likely won a championship in 95% of other seasons. Instead, they usually went up against some of the greatest teams in league history, derailing their chances to be perceived as champions. In today's video, I'm going to be ranking the best teams in NBA history to never win a championship. Number 7. The 2017 Cleveland Cavaliers. This version of the Cavaliers was nearly identical to last season where they ended up winning the title. This team featured a big three of LeBron James, Kyrie Irving, and Kevin Love. Surrounding them were decent role players such as J.R. Smith, Tristan Thompson, Kyle Korver, and Richard Jefferson. Although they only won 51 games in the regular season, they turned it up in the playoffs. On their way to the finals, Cleveland only lost one game. Finally, their run ended at the hands of the Warriors in the finals in just 5 games. Number 6. The 1993 Phoenix Suns. For those who don't understand how deep this team was, listen to this. The previous season, the Suns won 53 games, which placed them 4 games behind the first seed. Then, in the offseason, they added prime Charles Barkley. This addition catapulted the Suns to a league-best 62 wins in the regular season. Despite cruising through the regular season, when it came time for the playoffs, it was a completely different story for Phoenix. Against the 8-seeded Lakers in the first round, the Suns barely defeated them 3-2 after falling 2-0. In the next 2 rounds, the Suns took care of the Spurs and Supersonics in 6 and 7 games respectively. In the finals, they lost in 6 games to the Chicago Bulls on one of the biggest choke jobs in NBA history. They could be higher, but their struggles in the playoffs make me a little skeptical of their rankings. Number 5. The 2002 Sacramento Kings. Kings fans, this was your year. The Kings boasted the best record in the NBA at 61 wins. Similar to the 93 Suns, the Kings roster was deep and was headlined by a star power forward. But don't get it twisted. Despite Chris Webber being their best player, they played a more team-style approach. Peja Stojakovic, Mike Bibby, Vlade Divac, and Hedo Turkoglu rounded out the roster well. When you consider their chemistry combined with their talent, it was no surprise that they steamrolled their way to the Western Conference Finals. Long story short, they fell to the Kobe Shaq Lakers in 7 games behind some very sketchy officiating. Regardless, this is one of the best teams of the 2000s. Number 4. The 1996 Seattle Supersonics. These Sonics are one of the most forgotten teams in NBA history. Their identity was predicated around their suffocating defense as they posted the second best defensive rating that year. This team featured a 3-headed monster of Gary Payton, Shawn Kemp, and Detlef Schrempf. It's worth noting that this team had a top 10 offense and created many highlight-worthy plays. In the playoffs, the Sonics made it through the Western Conference and faced the 72-10 Chicago Bulls. That's arguably the greatest team of all time. After trailing 3-0 in the series, they won 2 straight before Chicago won Game 6 to close the door on Seattle's title hopes. Number 3. The 2013 San Antonio Spurs. This Spurs team was awfully similar to the 2014 Spurs, who not only won the title but are also widely regarded as one of the greatest teams of all time. They had an aging trio with Ginobili, Duncan, and Parker with an up-and-coming Kawhi Leonard. They also featured amazing talent with role players such as Danny Green and Patty Mills. So why did they not win it all? 2 things. They faced one of the greatest teams of all time in LeBron's Miami Heat. Second thing,
go for the 3 right away. Just attack the basket. James catches, puts up a 3. Won't go. Rebound Bosh. Back out to Allen. His 3-pointer. Bang! Tie game with 5 seconds remaining.
Number 2. The 2018 Houston Rockets. I remember vividly watching this team and thinking to myself that they could seriously beat the Warriors. Looking back, I was right. These Rockets ended up winning a league-high 65 games, boasting the best offense in the league with D'Antoni's offensive system. Something that was forgotten about this team was that they were a top 10 defensive team that season. Led by Harden and Paul while being backed up by elite role player talent, this team went to the Western Conference Finals. In the West Finals, they ran into the 2018 Golden State Warriors, arguably the greatest team of all time. Still, the Rockets pushed them to Game 7 before ultimately falling short. What's unfortunate for Rockets fans is that if Chris Paul hadn't injured his hamstring in Game 5, they would have likely won the series. Number 1. The 2016 Golden State Warriors. Till this day, it baffles me how a team this great can fall short. 73-9. Their offense revolutionized the NBA and inspired many teams to shoot more threes and play small ball. They featured the only unanimous MVP in NBA history in Stephen Curry. Through their league best offense and top 5 defense, they terrorized opposing teams. This team started off the season in historic fashion, winning their first 24 games. That is something nobody else has ever done. In the playoffs, they came back from down 3-1 against the Thunder to win the series, only to blow the same lead in the finals. Despite falling short, this is still one of the deepest teams in NBA history. I would take it a step further and say that they are one of the greatest teams in NBA history, regardless of the fact that they did not win the championship. So that wraps up the list. Which teams did I miss? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next video.